Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and for this week we have something special. We are taking a step out of the tower. I know we all love the Tower of Terror, but we needed a little palate cleanser, and because it's the week of Halloween, we figured what better thing than to go back to the Haunted Mansion, because there is a lot that we haven't discussed, and it's not like we're going to be able to cover everything in one episode. So what Kate and I have decided to do is select 3 individual topics that we are most excited about individually, and we will cover them ourselves. So with me to re-explore the unexplored, boundless realm of the Haunted Mansion is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, yo!
Hey, it's been way too long since we've been back at the mansion. I think it's been like 3 years since we did our 16 episode series on the Haunted Mansion.
It feels like that's how long we've been in tower for.
It does. But I feel like this is our element. This is where this is the first big series we ever did on Distory was about the Haunted Mansion. But the Haunted Mansion is the gift that keeps on giving. And I feel like there's always stories that we haven't covered. And so that's what we're bringing you today. Both of us selected 3 stories, so we'll have 6 in all, plus a very special premiere on this episode of some newly restored footage of the Haunted Mansion that we get to show you as well.
Groundbreaking exclusive.
Yes, very, very excited about that. But we'll get to that in a little bit. I think actually Kirk is up first with his very first story. I know, pressure's on.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, we got it. We're good.
Kirk mentioned that he had found a very special manual from Disneyland from the 1970s. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Kirk?
For some reason, I think it's really fun to read old SOPs or anything that's like a primary document from any of the attractions. So I was able to find, of course, it's Disneyland. I wish I could find one for World, but I digress because I wanted one that was pretty dated. And this was, the effective date was on May 11th, 1975. And you'll see this says Disneyland Standard Operating Procedures. And within this, in the table of contents, this is front facing to cast members. So it's essentially like, here's the baseline roles, here are the fact sheets about the attraction itself, a little bit of the story, where are the different rooms, what are the different roles that you'll play within here, and then how to manage some of the procedures as well as some of their costuming. So I thought that was really fun. I'm not going to read the entire thing because it's 25 pages, but I do want to pull out some salient things that I think are really interesting, including I love the fact that I might have been saying something wrong about the stretching room this entire time.
What? Okay.
So let's dive in to the manual. So the first page, it goes behind a little bit of the history and storyline of the mansion. We know that it's really fragmented in terms of what the legitimate story is for the Haunted Mansion. But we're going to push past this because it doesn't really add anything new from the series that Kate and I had done in the past. I do think it's fun to see that this was $7 million when they built it, and the opening date was August 9th, 1969. It gives a little bit more information about like the horsepower of the carriages. They had 131 total carriages, and they were 10 and 7.5 horsepower drive units.
Nice.
But you know what? What's interesting is, like, if you really wanted to geek out about breakdowns, I love this wait time based on 100% operations. It shows like main gate 5 minutes, first queue 10 minutes, second queue 18 minutes, third queue 30 minutes. So it's like trying to break down like how far back do you have to be and how long does that add on to your time before you enter on the attraction.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
Next thing is it goes through all of the different scenes and rooms and a little bit of information about each one, including the graveyards and the crypts. There are crowd control duties. These are some of the roles. But let's get into one of my favorite things, and that is dress variation. So most people know the Haunted Mansion garb, and I'm going to share this really old photo. This is funny. This is from opening year. So they're very, very dapper looking.
Oh yeah, they look great.
Yeah, I mean, you have a short waisted coat with long tails at the end, highly polished shoes. You have a vest underneath, as well as a wing-tipped collared shirt and a tie for the gentleman. And then for the ladies, very different apron style. So for probably a lot of people, you're not used to this style. You're used to striping, but there was no striping in the original ones. It was a very, very plain, simple design with like lace on the edges of not only their collars, but also on their wrists. And then I thought this was cool because it reminds me of Mickey's Not So Scary. On the head piece that the ladies are wearing, they actually had bats.
Oh, I love that.
So I wonder if they named their bats like they do for Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, because that's not a normal thing necessarily. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. What a great photo. That's fantastic.
I have some more information. This actually came from a gallery where they were auctioning off things. So you see John Hench in that first picture, and this was taken in 1969. This is an original costume design art. And then it featured a render of the cast member Butler costume accomplished in a graphite and pastel. And so you would get this big old picture, as well as a costume design for $8,000 to $10,000. And that would include that John Hench, drawing. And then down below, if you wanted to get if we go 1, 2, 3, the first object is Disneyland's Haunted Mansion cast member Butler costume from 1969 opening year. And the original costume, this had some wear from use, but you notice it did have coloration on it, but it was very minimal. It was like this dark plum vest, which I actually feel like when we were in Walt Disney World, I matched that pretty decently with my it was like a polo that I found that had the same striping pattern, but horizontal white and like crushed plum stripes. And then this deep, deep dark green, for the wool pants and jacket. And then, so that would be $2,000 to $3,000 if you had some bucks. And then we're going to skip all the way to number 3.
I love
because
number
this
3.
shows, number 3 shows the cast member made costume, including the cloak. So this was from 1970, and made cloaks, were, if it was really, really cold out, they would have like this like extra outer layer, which I thought was awesome. It kind of reminds me of, speaking of the tower, how the tower had several different forms of dress, including that big, longer style like trench coat, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. I love the cape on that.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like very, very polished and ornate for just an attraction. I think, again, this like harkens back to like the devil's in the details, and Disney just does such a nice job with these. And then in the middle, actually, that one's really cheap. That's only $700 to $800, Kate.
What?
That's not too bad. Yeah, I feel like for a 1970 Disneyland official cloak, I feel like that's cheap. And then the middle one is from the 1990s, so this is something that's more contemporary that most people would be used to. However, if we go back to our operating procedures, under dress variation 3A, under crowd control number 1, in hot weather, males may substitute a long vest for the coat at the direction of their foreman. B, in cold weather, females may wear a black Disneyland sweater. And C, non-reflective, non-mirrored type dark glasses may be worn. What I thought was interesting is I couldn't find the specific Disneyland sweater look. I was able to find a Disneyland sweater on eBay. So this actually came from the 70s as well. And it was like a cardigan one, but I was like, you're telling me they could wear this over their Haunted Mansion?
Like a Disneyland resort? That looks like more just merch to me.
But it's not. It's not merch, because do you see the barcode?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This garment is property of the Walt Disney Company and may not be used in accordance of approved guidelines. Like, this is official costuming.
But from the Haunted Mansion? Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, they said that you could wear a black Disneyland sweater. So I couldn't think of anything else or find anything else in reference photos of vintage photos during the winter. I looked everywhere from the 60s and the 70s and could not find it. The closest I could find to any person in that time period was this picture. And you can see all the way in the bottom this guy, but he's wearing the traditional garb.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
he looks great. Look at that.
Oh yeah. He's got the shoes and everything.
Look at the trash cans. I know. They need to bring those back. Those are fantastic.
It says waste paper.
Nice.
Now, the reason why this is going to be fun, you want to geek out for a second about trash cans?
Yes, always.
Okay, let's geek out about trash cans. if you notice, there are 2 other trash cans. Now, we can't see the front-facing side where the trash can would open up on this one in the center. But on the left-hand side, we can, even though it's a little bit obscured by, look at these rental strollers, by the way. They're made out of, like, all fixed metal poles with, like, a crappy little cushion and, like, a little bit of, like, almost like a hammock seat.
That would get so hot in the sun.
Like, well, look. Some had, if you paid a little extra, you could get the sunshade on the left-hand side, or the ones in the front. They clearly did not pay for the sunshade option. Must have been an add-on.
Sorry, you don't have enough money to shield your child from the sun.
They do mention stroller parking too, in terms of like property management and whatnot, and crowd control. But you'll notice on this one, it does not say waste paper on it. Now, Kate, why do you think his right in the front in the 60s, well, 69 / this was taken in 71. Why do you think his specifically says waste paper only?
Because of tickets? Is he taking
tickets? Yes. So it's hard to see here, but it does say that this is an e-coupon. And I just think it's fun to look back at this. If you think Disney is complicated with their systems, they've always been complicated. Look at this system for the ABCs of Disneyland ticket books. And it shows you the attractions one. I'm not going to go too heavy into this, but I just think it's fun to see. But e-ticket back then was 85 cents to ride the Haunted Mansion, which I always think is fun to think that you could get into Disneyland for so cheap and you don't have to ride anything. You just vibe out if you want. So but that was not the original way, is you had to pay as you go. But I think that's fun.
Do you know what the catalyst was for them to change from ticket books to the all-inclusive passport?
What was the catalyst?
Epcot, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because when they opened Epcot, they had all these sponsors for all these different attractions, and it didn't make sense for, like, they didn't want to categorize them as A through E, because then some sponsors, like, why do I only get an A attraction and this one gets an E? And like, they were kind of like almost like equal in a way. So they introduced the idea of this all-inclusive passport for Epcot. But my understanding is they did actually print tickets for Epcot. So if they needed to pivot, they could, but they didn't end up using them. But it was so popular with guests, they implemented it at the other Disney parks because people just loved the idea of paying one flat fee and not having to shell out tickets and more as you went through your day. So it's kind of interesting because you think about, like, I feel that's the same way of people with choosing the Disney dining plan versus just paying a la carte. It's like, it's too annoying to pay a la carte. I don't care that I'm overpaying slightly, but I can just go and do whatever I want without being held in or tied into these, like, in that instance, it would be the ticket books. Right, exactly. People don't like to feel like they're shelling out money all day. They want to just, like, I've already paid all this, I'm just going to enjoy it, But
yet, that's exactly how I feel, Kate.
Well, you also got to go on rides multiple times and stuff, too. Like, you had a ticket, you only had to go on that ride once. So, like,
you'd have to buy another ticket or reuse a ticket.
Exactly. So,
anyway. Right. Diving back into SOPs, if you were working the turnstile and you were doing ticket taking, one e-coupon or the equivalent would be received from each person over the age of 3. No combination of tickets. Tickets are to be torn in half and placed in the ticket box, and care should be taken to ensure the turning of the turnstile for each ticket holder. But here's what I love. Number 4 on here, I never knew these existed. Courtesy tickets involve the following types: the white ticket with pink keys and re-admission tickets, or re-ads. And they actually talk about re-ads a lot later on. But I was able to find courtesy ticket bucket.
Ooh, cool.
So
with
this
one paper.
It's I thought that was kind of coincidental, right? This would only be given to you by guest relations. And so it was a different ticket that was good for anything. So you could, this kind of reminds me of, like, in today's scenario, a lightning lane when an attraction goes down and they're like, oh, you can go on anything else or these certain ones.
Multi-experience pass.
Right. So this is like a multi-experience lightning lane, but I just think that it's fun that it has a little pink key on it.
It is. It's so cute.
Yeah. I had no idea that they had courtesy tickets, but courtesy 5 adventures in Disneyland.
Well, it's kind of like that iconography for the magic key key holders, like the annual pass holders. Now they call them magic key holders, which that language comes from somewhere else, which we don't need to get into right now. But I love that the imagery, that if you can go back to that one that has the key on it, it looks so much like the magic key kind of like brand that they've done.
It is very, very similar in terms of look and feel.
Definitely.
It's obviously where it comes from.
Yeah.
You know what's funny too is I'm trying to think back to the Nintendo game. You had to collect magic keys, and that was in Disneyland's Magic Kingdom. So, I mean, I guess I never put 2 and 2 together until right this moment, but
yeah, Magic Key has been around a long time as terminology, but now we think of it as annual pass holders because they've rebranded it as such. So,
all right. So now for why I've been screwing up with the stretching room.
Okay, I'm ready.
In the SOPs, they call them expanding rooms.
Okay.
So the expanding rooms carry the guests from the foyer to the hallway, approximately 15 feet underground, using 2 hydraulic elevators capable of carrying approximately 80 guests down only. So one, I love that they actually call them the ER in the rest of this SOP. So you'll be like, if you're heading into the ER, or only one ER is running, and I was like, what the heck's the ER? And it's because I was like, wouldn't it be the stretching room, like the way that their language was? But they call them expanding. Yeah. So I don't know when they changed language from expanding rooms to stretching rooms, but or maybe it's just been guessed because is this room actually expanding? Or is it your imagination? It doesn't sound as good, you know?
No. Well, it's interesting that that's like internal language. They would never call it that with the guests,
right.
You know?
Right. The one thing though I absolutely love in here is it talks about if you have to, in emergency, use the elevators, right? It says section 6, under no circumstances take an elevator back up with a capacity load of 80 or so people. If the doors won't open, so this is like meaning like you're stuck in the stretching room. If the doors won't open, do not ascend. The elevator oil lines will burst.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The only time that the expanding room will ascend with guests will be in an emergency situation when the weight limit will be roughly 2,000 pounds or approximately 10 to 12 people. The descending limit, though, is 12,000 pounds. So it's a lot easier to go down than it is to go up.
The way the stretching room elevator works in Disneyland is it's a piston-based system with it. Like it's a hydraulic system that has like a center pull. That's why they ask you to come to the center of the room. They're really trying to balance the elevator so it's not wonky.
Yeah, otherwise you're like tipping off to the side.
Right. But that they do go up with guests, or at least they did before they added the like ADA entrance with the new expansion. They did.
Yeah, I was going to say they used to do ADA all the time, right?
Right. Yeah. So, but they never packed it full of people. So now that makes sense that they can only have a certain number of people to go back
like
up.
No more than 12. Otherwise, the elevator oil lines will burst. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that's crazy.
Tragedy in the mansion.
It would be really bad if that happened.
Wow,
so I thought that was really fun. And then there's just one more thing I wanted to talk about because I just find this stuff to be entertaining.
According to Joshua Harris in our chat, he said the elevator motor did burst once in the 70s per Tom K. Morris. That's said that happened once. So it has happened. So maybe that's why it's in there. This is 1975. So they're like,
that would make sense.
This in the manual. This doesn't happen again.
Yeah, well, I mean, they do talk about, like, in the opening procedures, check the ER shafts for oil and debris.
Yeah.
You know? All right, and then the last thing, there is, dude, you'll like this too. It shows where the rolls actually stand.
Oh, yeah,
so,
that's fun.
And this is interesting, and I flipping love this roll. This is, like, the greatest roll ever. However, Kate, you can't do this roll.
What?
You are not allowed to do this roll.
Excuse me.
This is my favorite roll. It is called the utility roll. The function of the utility operator is to maintain order in the attraction. So we're talking about physically being on the ride and making sure guests are acting appropriately on the mansion. Function A is to correct unruly guests. And B, to maintain watch of animations and potential hazards from the actual operations of the scenes. Operators should have a flashlight at all times, stay out of guest view as much as possible as to not spoil the show, but they would cover in the following positions. So they would not ride the attraction. They would instead be posted at the entrance to the Grand Hall, the end of the Grand Hall, and the entrance of the graveyard. So they would literally be hiding out of guest view, making sure guests were being appropriate, such as things like Number 5, if a guest is caught causing damage, escort him to the foreman. So like guests are like, you know how we talked about people like stealing things from Snow White, like stealing the apples and stuff.
Yeah.
And guests damage stuff all the time. Like they spit on the Donald Duck chair before they completely got rid of that at Walt Disney World. So that was number 1. Catch them doing damage to props and things. But number 6 is such a sign of the 70s. If a guest is smoking, ask him to please extinguish it. So if you see some dude just smoking on the Haunted Mansion, they're not in trouble. You don't have to get a boss because it must have been commonplace that people would just light a cigarette on the Haunted Mansion and you just would say, hey, can you put that out?
Yeah, sign of the times. That would not be what would happen now.
Okay, and then next, this is like more bad guest behavior. Number 7, when the Omnimover system is stopped, watch for guests climbing out of the cars or destroying sets.
They would still do that today.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the reason why our Tiana's and before that Splash Mountain had to have lap restraints because prior to that, it was just wide open. There was nothing. There was no seatbelts. There was no lap bar. There was nothing. And guests could easily just get out when things were stopped and start monkeying about. So they ended up adding the lap bars to that.
But they never did to Disneyland. What? Disneyland still does not have lap bars and stuff.
Oh, interesting. Do people get out there or is it tight? Is it real packed because it's a single row?
Well, they have dividers in between the people, but you could totally just climb out if you wanted to. There's nothing restraining you. You have to hold on in order to restrain yourself. But you wouldn't fly out. I'm sure that they've experimented to make sure that's safe, but it's a different animal over at Disneyland for that attraction. So.
Yeah. Well, you have to be able to escape if it starts taking on water and going under. Number 8, if any illegal drug is found or a guest is using any such drug, notify the foreman. Do not take drugs from guests, but notify security. So like if you see them with drugs, you're not allowed to touch them.
Don't take drugs, kids.
Don't take drugs. It says it right here in the manual.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason why females can't be utility operators. Due to long dresses, female operators will not be stationed in the utility position while the attraction is operating. They were worried that their dresses would get caught in something and then in the machining. So
that makes
it was only a dude's job.
Yeah.
Operators will cross between moving cars only if absolutely necessary. And then if a guest is found out of a car, do not put him back in the car.
Physically pick them up and like put them back in the Omnimover.
Walk him to service and via the service access hallways. But yeah, I think that's so good. Don't
probably not pick them up, but that's what it sounds like.
Well, I mean, it's like if like it was stopped, right? And you're like, sir, can you get back in your car? They want you to like literally just escort them out.
Right.
There.
They're like, you're done, buddy. Like we're going to walk out now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny.
Well, there you go. That's what I got is the SOPs, a little glimpse into the 1975 life of a maid or butler for the Haunted Mansion.
Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So on to story number 2, and that would be me. I'm up. So we're going to talk about something that I actually talked about a little bit. If you follow me on social media at Disney Cicerone on any platform, you would have heard, you got a little sneak preview of Distory this week because we're going to talk about the repurposed Haunted Mansion skull. So in the pre-opening publicity photos for the Haunted Mansion, we see the Hatbox Ghost as like this Pepper's Ghost effect. So right now we're seeing Yale Gracey with his arm around a Pepper's Ghost version of the Hatbox Ghost, right? And so here's a better version of that photo here so you can see it more clearly. And it's obvious that like he's not there. He's like reaching his hands inside the Hatbox Ghost. He's not physical prop, right? So that's the same Pepper's Ghost effect we see with the dancers in the ballroom and whatnot. But that was never the actual effect used in the mansion for the Hatbox Ghost, obviously. Even from his brief appearance in 1969, he was only there for a very, very short period of time, so much so that people didn't even know if maybe he didn't exist. Did we make him up? You know, it became this giant thing of like this urban legend of this Hatbox Ghost. But he looked like this in 1969. He was installed for a very brief period of time. And if you don't know the lore behind this, we won't get into very deep about the Hatbox Ghost because we could talk a long time about figure number 42, which is what his figure number is. Basically, the effect just wasn't as effective as they wanted to. You can see that his head in the box is a physical head. And so it was supposed to be his face would light up and then it would illuminate the one in the hat box as if his face had moved, right? Just like we see today in the attraction when they remade it. But it was a different kind of effect. So it wasn't exactly how they wanted it to look. So because it wasn't effective, they pulled it out of the attraction and it became this massive urban legend. So, but what I want you to look at is in this photo of Yale Gracey, who is holding a skull down into the Pepper's Ghost hat box of the Hatbox Ghost, because the skull is what we need to talk about today. So this is presumably a mummified skull. This is what it looks like up close, which is really freaky looking. It's got its mouth wide open, just a few random teeth, some hair. It definitely looks mummified. Some people have said, is this paper mache? Did they actually make it from the mansion? Honestly, like, people said, where did it come from? Given that Pirates of the Caribbean, they got like a really good deal on a whole bunch of like human remains and skeletons for Pirates of the Caribbean, before it opened in 1967, that was while they were developing the Haunted Mansion as well, it would track that they potentially got this from that same batch of discount skeletons that they got from the UCLA medical lab, is my best guess about where this came from, but I don't know for sure. So that's just speculation.
Oh,
it is super creepy. But that's basically what he's holding in this photo, is this mummified creepy face. So this is actually the inspiration for the Hatbox Ghost's creepy face. You can see this is Yale Gracey holding this skull with some illumination here. But how we know this is the inspiration for it is because Yale Gracey's sons found this skull in a box in his attic years later, and it was labeled as Hatbox Ghost Prototype. So this is the actual skull. Cool. Yeah, that was the inspiration for his face. It doesn't look exactly the same as the Hatbox Ghost, but it's similar. So when you see this face in the Hatbox Ghost, the original face is inspired by real human remains, as far as we know. We also see I
see dead people.
What is interesting, Kirk, is that I've seen this kind of like promo video for the Haunted Mansion. I think this is from 1970, where you see Yale Gracey kind of playing with all these effects. We see Madame Leota, we see the bus, this what become the singing bus. But on this table, right in front of him where his hand is, this skull is actually sitting there next to Leota. And I was like, it's been there all along.
Yeah, you wouldn't. It's like, it's so easy to see sculpts and just kind of ignore them, but wow. To catch that, though, in this one specific frame.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like, I didn't even realize that was there. But this skull was not only used for the Hatbox Ghost. So if you remember when we talked about the one-eyed cat concept for the Existencio put together, we won't go over this in detail because we've talked about it a lot on Distory, including in the Extended Queue episode, because we see the black cat show up there that's supposed to be the one-eyed cat, but he has two eyes, and I digress. We have issues with that. But anyway, the whole this one-eyed demon cat sneaks into the mansion and then is supposed to morph into a terrifying demon face. So here's some really great art here from Existencio of this cat with his little one eye. And my understanding is that like somebody got freaked out by the cat and like stabbed him in the eye, and that's why he has one eye. So anyway, that's just what I've heard. But as he go in the mansion, he actually turns into this like terrifying demon face that pops out at guests, terrifying them in the dark, which I think is like, we have the pop-up ghosts. There used to be a whole bunch of other blast-up ghosts. We used to have a whole bunch more in the attic that we don't have anymore. But we do have them still in the graveyard. So we have the pop up behind the tombstones and whatnot. So the same kind of concept of like, they pop out of nowhere and they scare you, right? That's here. So we can also see some more art here by Existencio of potentially what these ghosts might have looked like. These kind of demon faces kind of popping out of the dark. That was the cat that turned into these demons. But he also used that skull for this concept, for that the demon that the cat turns into. Is you can see the resemblance is so close with the teeth in particular and the wide open mouth and the like wonky eyes. If you want to look at them kind of like back to back here, he definitely was like, okay, hey Yale, can I borrow your mummified skull so I can like sketch it for a minute?
Oh, 1,000%.
So anyway, I just thought that was a really interesting kind of weird find that I didn't have that information when we did this series 3 years ago. So I just thought I would share that. So,
well, you know what they always say, 2 heads are better than 1.
on to our second stories. Kirk, you're up next, and I believe you have a record for us to go over today.
Yes. So I purchase antique vintage records specifically from Disneyland and Disney World. I think they're very fascinating. They're very fun to look at, and they're very tactile. So what I wanted to do, though, rather than play this album, there is a story that was inlaid in a 1970 Disneyland record and book titled Walt Disney Presents The Haunted Mansion. It was a 24-page book with full color illustrations, and it accompanied a 7-inch record. So it was a long playing record with narrations. There were some voices in it, but I think the illustrations are my favorite part of this. So what you're looking at is the cover art, which is obviously for the mansion in Disneyland. We don't have worlds yet. This is 1970. And there are some silly specters and ghosties. And then, of course, we have our Raven, our disembodied potential narrator or original narrator that was supposed to be there, which it's very funny because there are two major records for the Haunted Mansion. And the one that most people know, it's like Thurl Ravencroft and a bunch of other really famous folks had ties to it and narrated it, and it's fantastic. And it tells the story of two kids. This one puts you into walking into the mansion. So like you're going through and experiencing.
That's fun for kids, especially. So, yeah.
Right. So I am going to read through this and narrate using my best ghost host voice when needed, or potentially other sounds.
Excellent.
So
okay.
Get excited. So the first thing that we see is it's like the cover letter coming into it. This is a Disneyland original, little long playing record, and I am your storyteller. I'm going to now begin to read to you the story of the Haunted Mansion. What I love about this too is it still uses the old hitchhiking ghosts, as you can see.
Yeah.
Phineas and Pock are okay, but whoa, what is going on with Ezra?
Well, I don't even think that's
is
Ezra. It's like the other one that they almost had.
Yeah, it was like they almost had but didn't have.
Right.
So I thought that was fun.
Huh. Okay.
So, have you ever been in a haunted mansion? I have, and I'd like to tell you about it. It was in an old house, sitting all alone at the end of a dark street. Boop. For those that don't know what I'm doing, this is how we would listen to books on tape. It would usually accompany an illustrated children's book, and we would flip the pages, which was really fun. I used to have a choose your own adventure one that if you pressed different colors, it would set you to a different audio track. It was really neat. There's an old high iron fence around the property with a rusty squeaky gate. The sidewalk leading to the porch was broken and overgrown with weeds. The wind was blowing the trees, and the branches made strange noises as they brushed against the house. You'll also notice that there's some similarities to the mansion, and then there are some glaring differences too, which I think is kind of cool to see in terms of like storyline of like what things are in here. Boop. Our next scene, we see the executioner, but behind him is one of the changing portraits, which is kind of fun.
Why is he letting you in the house?
I entered the open front door and was greeted by a ghostly voice. Good evening. Welcome to the Haunted Mansion. The voice seemed to be coming from the art gallery. Good evening, I said in a shaky voice. Do you mind my being here?
That's what I always say when I go to somebody's house.
You just B&E'd. You just B&E'd, and now you're like, yo, are you cool if I'm here? Anyway, not at all, the voice replied. We have so few visitors. May I show you around? Now, we'll also see some wood paneling around. There aren't any demonic faces in any of the wood paneling, which I thought was interesting because we do see that in the attractions themselves. And also even there's like no door knocker to the door, but we do see a bust on the side right, although not a very nondescript. But I think this is also like, because it's for kids, you'll notice we don't get the really creepy, scary ghosts like you would in the beginning parts of the attraction. It's a lot more frightening. So
yeah, it's interesting because they were going to have the bust in the lobby, they were going to have the bust in the foyer be the the voice of the ghost host at one point. They were going to have, that was the idea of the animated bus that we see singing in the graveyard. One of them was going to be in the lobby and like talking and would actually be your ghost host. So I kind of wonder, it looks like the butler, like it almost looks like that face of that bust here looks like it could be the butler, aka like the ghost host, like leading you around, which is, but why is the executioner opening the door here? Like, I don't
know, but he seems pretty cool about it. He's like, yo, what's up?
I know.
And also he's not like that's a person where, you know, he's a ghost in the graveyard scene. So it's kind of interesting that they decided to give him a body where everybody else is just like a roaming specter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We, my ghost host voice and I, went into the art gallery, and the paintings were very strange. They seemed to be stretching. In fact, the entire room was getting taller. The ceiling was going up, and the floor was going down. A panel in the wall opened, and I ran out of the gallery and into the corridor. Now, in this one, so, like, storytelling in the actual stretching room is a guest gets so scared that they scream, and they run, and they smash through the wall. And they've created an opening out of a room that did not have a door. So that's like the actual storyline. But in here, it's just, oh, I saw a panel in the wall open, so I ran.
Yeah, that's interesting. And look at how many different portraits there are in here. Like way more than the four we have.
Well, obviously, based on our vantage point, they were trying to stick bowler hat, Constance, diplomat, and parasol all on one wall.
Yeah, it's like one side.
Right, exactly. Just to like fit them all in.
Yeah.
You know? But what's interesting is they did utilize the Raven throughout this entire story. So even though we know that it's being narrated by the person who experienced this entire thing, which is really kind of us, and the ghost host is doing most of the talking, the Raven is still omnipresent, just like they are in the actual attraction.
Right.
So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Plus, there's all these bats. We don't get bats, and there's nobody hanging at the top. But interesting.
I know. We get bats later in the attic at this time, but we would not. So maybe that's what they're trying to imply here is like you could see bats in the attic because that's way up high, right? In the cupola. So.
Yeah, that would make sense to me.
Yeah.
Boop. Along one side of the corridor are windows. From them, I could see the garden outside. It had begun to rain and thunder. When the lightning flashed, it changed the pictures on the opposite side of the corridor into weird shapes and ghostly creatures. So we're seeing the changing portraits along the sides, which are really cool. And these are actually a lot more demonic faces of like skeletons and some ghouls and almost a character that vaguely represents a Frankenstein character with a triangle nose.
Yeah.
At the far end of the hallway, I could see a staircase leading to a second floor. I climbed the steps very slowly, not knowing what I would run to next. Beep. The air got colder, and I could hear the rain splashing against the window. I walked down the hall, and there in the conservatory was a coffin. "Don't scream," the ghost host warned. "You may wake up one of our guests. Come this way, Madame Leota is waiting for us." So we have our little Exitensio coffin being opened up. The Raven is perched over that funerary wreath as well, and you do see that outside portion with the candlesticks on top.
Right.
But the arms are pushing it up, which is cool.
Very similar to what the conservatory looks like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Madame Leota was a spirit. In fact, she was just a head in a crystal ball. Which, by the way, ridiculous. Ridiculous,
like Miss
dude.
Piggy. She looks like.
She has a very yellow look to her and horrible bags under her eyes. She has not had a good rest in a while. Also, she's got summer teeth. Some are here, some are there. And what's weird is she's being illuminated by like a
lamp,
unbridled lamp. It's just like a shade with light coming out of it.
But they did have a lamp back then. Yeah, but that's interesting.
But it's like this is like a disembodied lamp because it's just the top, you know. But I thought you would like this. The rug is floating.
Yeah, I love the idea of the oscillating floating rug.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of history behind that, but we don't have time to get into it right now. So
Yep. She called to objects in the seance room and they began to float around her. There was a table, a lamp, a horn, a bell, and a drum all in the air at the same time. I could hear music from another room and went to investigate. I passed the strangest clock. It was a grandfather type, but it had 13 hours instead of 12. Now, a little bit less demonic, but certainly interesting.
Yeah.
And there's little tiny mice on the bottom. They look so cute.
They look Cinderella mice.
They do look Cinderella mice.
Do you know who illustrated this?
So this was Colin Campbell.
Okay, that's what I thought, but making sure.
Colin Campbell. Yep. Boop. The music was coming from the Grand Hall, which most people, we talk about this often. It is the Grand Hall. 99% of guests will call this the ballroom scene.
Yeah.
But this is called the Grand Hall because it encompasses not only the fireplace, the dining table, the ballroom, and then the organ area. And then, of course, all the portraits above and the characters on the chandelier. The music was coming from the Grand Hall. As I stood on the balcony and watched, I couldn't believe my eyes. It seemed to be someone's birthday, and the ghosts were having a wonderful time. Some ghosts were sitting at the dinner table, while others played on the chandelier overhead. Several ghosts danced at the haunting refrain played by the grinning organist.
Nice.
What I do like is that they do have, like, Shorty is on here, and they do have Caesar.
Yeah.
So some of the characters are accurate, and they a little tie into the spider and the webbing that's all over, which I think is cool.
Yeah, look at the spider.
You know, and now I don't know when that guest brought in the 22 and shot the panes, but you know they always.
Gosh, I want to say it was 73. So it might have been,
you know, so this was like foreshadowing to needing a spider on the window.
Well, and I'll show a concept later on that Mark Davis actually made a concept of the, let me start that over. That was like terrible. Well, I'll actually show a concept later on of an organist that was a spider. So I kind of wonder if they pulled some of the inspiration from that, considering he's so close to the organist in this picture.
There's definitely some great inspiration taken from a lot of different Disney works or concept art for sure.
Yeah.
Boop. A thumping sound attracted my attention. It came from an unfinished attic. There in the darkened room stood a ghostly bride. Her heart glowed red with each beat. Yo, look at her lips, bro.
Look at her eyes.
Her eyes are, she's got, for those that are just listening to Distory, it is a cloaked and hooded figure holding a bouquet of roses and a candle. Their heart is illuminated red, showing motions of beats. But underneath the cloak and the hood is just blackness, except for two little dots for eyes and a half mouth.
Some of the earlier versions of the Beating Heart Bride looked more like this, that she was like black in her face and whatnot. So this is great. I love it.
Yeah. And then our boy came back. Woo! He came back even though he was only there for a short period in Disneyland. The Hatbox Ghost is seen here on the right. I turned to run out of the attic, but another image blocked my way. He was a large cloaked figure whose head disappeared from his shoulders and appeared in the hatbox he held in his hands. So again, people always ask, like, what happens to you after you come out of the attic? I do think it's interesting that both on this record, as well as the record with the brother and sister characters, they both walk out of the attic via either stairs or some sort of window, where, you know, it's up to guests to kind of interpret what happened. Were you so scared that you fell out? That's kind of where Kate and I go with the actual attraction, hence why you feel so
backwards,
disoriented as you're going backwards and falling. So rather than, because you wouldn't walk down the stairs like that.
Right. Well, and you know, what's interesting here is it points out a very critical piece to that attic is that you're supposed to, you know how you take that really dramatic turn to the right in the attic?
Yeah.
That's because you see that bride, and that's what it says here. It's like you saw the bride, and then I turned to run out of the attic because you got scared by seeing her. So the bride's position used to be right where you would see her, and then you would get scared, and then turn and run out of the attic, and then you would see that box ghost, and then you would like maybe startle and fall out the window, and that was the original
double scare.
Yeah, layout of the. But we've lost that momentum though of that turn. The turn doesn't make as much sense because they've moved the bride essentially. So still bitter about that, but it's fine. We can move on.
Boo. That's just the ghost in the, that's not me being upset.
Nice.
Boop. I climbed out of the window and onto a balcony and then down a tree. So think about that for a second.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
I climbed out a window and onto a balcony and then down a tree and was greatly relieved to be out of that house. Now I had another problem. I was out of the house, but in the graveyard. I tried to get help from the caretaker, but he was more frightened than I. He and his dog were just shaking. So you see Crump and Bones chilling in there.
Yeah. I love this ghost that's just like sitting on the balcony, grinning at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost like makes me think like, is that the guy who's talking? Like, isn't that weird?
Yeah. Oh, and it's really interesting, the idea of climbing down the tree. I've never entertained that idea that we climb down the tree in any of this.
I mean, the tree's right there, so it kind of could make sense.
Yeah, I don't think we do in the attraction, but I think it's interesting that they do that in this book. So
yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Boop. You'll like this because it's got all the characters from the graveyard.
Nice.
Down the path I went, and I passed a group of singing minstrels who paid no attention to me at all, which I think is interesting because we don't get the band here.
Yeah, where are they?
There's no Phantom Five. Where's the Phantom Five?
Looking for them, and they're
Instead,
not there.
we get cats, and then we get 4 owls who look exactly like bum 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 bum.
Oh, Archimedes?
Archimedes.
Yeah.
This is totally lifted from Sword in the Stone, which I think is because Sword in the Stone came out in the 60s, so this is like perfect timing for them to just be like, oh my gosh, kids will recognize this because Sword in the Stone.
Yeah. Look at those cats. So great. Mark Davis was the one that brought all the cats into the mansion, so that's great.
A group of cats and a family of owls joined in spooky harmony. I passed a king and queen teetering on a gravestone and a hearse stuck in the mud. There were ghosts riding bicycles. I thought you would like that part. And masked executioner singing a duet with a decapitated knight.
Look at them. They're so happy.
Mm-hmm. And then let's bring it home with our last page. Boop. 3 hitchhikers stood on the side of the path. Beware, my friend, said the ghost host. They may try to follow you home. I ran the rest of the way down the path, through the crypt and out the gate. At last, my venture was over, and I was frightened, but intrigued. I'd like to visit that house again and unravel its mysteries. And I felt that's exactly how Kate and I feel about the Haunted Mansion, is we'd like to visit that house again
And
unravel more of its mysteries.
Yes. Again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Always. I love this. This is fantastic.
Yeah. It's, what I like about seeing different forms of the mansion, because this is technically canon, in a way, even though it's adjacent, when it's done by the Disney company, it's hard for you to just dismiss it. Of course, the attraction has its own pieces, and it was built prior to this being made, but it's hard not to take some ideas from this. I know there are liberties being taken when it's this form,
Right.
but it still has to get approvals, and I still think it's really interesting.
No, I think it's great. And it's fairly faithful retelling of most of it. It's not like they're going to read that book and then go on the ride and be like, this wasn't like the book, like it really does help you.
I didn't climb down the tree, lady.
Well, and I only got to go to Disneyland, I think 3 times as in my child, 4 times, but I don't remember the first one because I was 2. So like I did not get to go to Disneyland very often, as is a lot of kids. And so like, how amazing is it that you got to relive your attraction that you went on or get excited about going on the attraction that you might only get to visit once or twice in your life, So really special.
Well, there's some kids who, this might be the only way they get to experience it. I mean, I listened to a lot of records when I was a kid, and I have tons of them. And I think it's really fun to think about the audio journeys that we took as kids, where 99% of things are visual now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we had to use our imaginations more. Like we've done this with our like family dinners, is like really sat around and just asked questions to each other and had fun, and we go around the table and everybody has to ask a different question. Like really taking the time to disconnect, I think, is going to be a very valuable skill, because that's not the norm anymore. It used to be the norm,
right?
Not the norm. So slowing down and disconnecting and being more human and using it's okay to be bored. that's also something we were teaching our kids. So I think that stuff is fun. Like, I would imagine, experiences rather than always having visuals.
Right. So we have something really special for you guys coming up next. We have a little special treat for Halloween. We have a special premiere for you guys from our historian friend and now frequent collaborator, Joshua L. Harris. He's letting us premiere his latest film restoration of a never-before-seen 35mm excerpt of the Kirk, Russell, and Osmonds touring the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland on the Wonderful World of Disney from 1970. So you might have seen this before, but it's been in rough shape for a really long time. Like, I have only seen it in like really pixelated, very dusty, very like really just awful. So it's both color corrected and enhanced from the original. So we'll show what the original looked like too afterwards. If you'd like to check out Joshua's Disney history work, we're going to put links to his dual personalities of JLH Omnimedia and E82 in the show notes for you. And if you'd like to support his digital preservation work, you can join his locals community at epcotlegacy.locals.com, where you can find advanced previews of new projects and also a whole bunch of other exclusives not found anywhere else online. So if you're a huge Disney history person and you want some exclusive access to things you can't find anywhere else, that's a great place to go. So thank you, Joshua, for allowing us to premiere this on Distory today. We appreciate it. And we know all of our Distorians do as well. So without further ado, I can't actually play the audio for you guys because of copyright issues. So we're just going to chat about what we're seeing. So this starts in with the changing portrait of Medusa, which flashes back and forth. And then we see everybody walking in through the portrait gallery. And it's what's you want to look at as we're watching this. What's different than a usual story is that there's a lot of film lighting that you'll see. It's not the same as it is for when we go on the attraction now. You'll see it's a lot brighter, so you can actually see all of the details as we go through. So now they're actually getting on the attraction. We see them all chatting about it, and you'll be able to watch this later, I'm sure, at epcotlegacy.com. But so you can hear all of the fun audio that they do for this. You see everybody loading onto the Omnimover, lots of smiling people looking pretty scared as they ascend into the mansion. And then we see, of course, the endless hallway with them reacting to it as well. And that candelabra was actually a very late addition to the mansion. They were going to have a ghost rushing over your head instead as an effect here that they decided not to do. And then we see the exitentioed voiced skeleton trying to get out of the coffin, which I think really interesting here. Not only would you get a close-up of the raven, but the coffin is actually like rocking back and forth, which is not an effect that is something we see today. So that was different back in 1960s and 1969 and 70s when this premiered. So lots and lots of coffin action, if you will. Then we do see Leota here. You can definitely see the carpet, how it's elevated off the floor, like we were talking about it floating. And that lamp that we talked about that is over her head is there as well. Now we are in the Grand Hall. Really great video of this, but you can see there's only one set of dancers because they were going to have mirrors that actually would amplify, that would make them into two groups of dancers, and they decided not to do that because you wouldn't have been effective to see it all the way down the length of the hall. So that's why they added a second turntable of dancers later. Here you see some bats floating in the attic, which we talked about earlier. So they're on Batmobiles that were developed by Yale Gracey, and they're flying around. And it's so well lit in this attic. You'll never see it like that again. This, I think, is from the end of the graveyard that they plugged in early because I don't think that raven is actually there. I think they did that out of order. But here you can see lots of lightning effects in the graveyard with no scrim kind of hiding you from the back of that scene. A really great shot of the ghosts that are going around in circles and the king and queen on the seesaw where you see one and then you saw the other. The Duke and the Duchess rising up. These are the original version. They look different today. And then we have the executioner, the pop-up ghost, them looking very scared. And everything is so well lit in this. Like, you would never see it this bright today. We get the original hitchhiking ghosts pointing the way out. And then we're at the mirrors where you're supposed to see a ghost following you home. But you don't actually see anything in the mirror here, which is interesting that they didn't show that effect. And then they're getting off the ride, looking very scared. And and then they walk out, and that lamp that we see there, Kirk, is very similar. I think this is the smoking gun for me for our Mr. Toad series, where we're trying to figure out where the lamps from Mr. Toad and Walt Disney World came from, because they said they came from Disneyland. I really think that they came from this land here in New Orleans Square, because this is exactly what they look like. So I think this is the best picture I've ever found of one of these lamps that they repurposed for Mr. Toad and Walt Disney World. Anyway, so that is what it looks like restored. Thank you so much, Joshua, for sharing that with us. So this is what it looked like before it got restored. You can see it has a lot of distortion and the color and whatnot. And it's definitely was a lot of work to get that looking better for you guys. So thank you so much, Joshua, for that. There is one more thing that we want to point out about this video in particular before we move on from this. Kirk, do you happen to have that slowed down clip of the attic?
Sure. So this shows them clearly lighting. So I'm going to backtrack it just a little bit because it's really fast. You could see them filming and lighting the scene right here on the left-hand side as it slows down. But you got one more shot at it of them filming here in the Haunted Mansion.
It's like actually a guy holding a light.
Yep.
You would not get that today unless that was that cast member position, making sure they didn't get
Utility. It was a gentleman. No dresses could get caught there.
So before we move on, we're going to take just a quick little break. We got some really great stories coming up you're not going to want to miss. But just wanted to talk a little bit about what we have going on at Disney Cicerone and Walrus Cart for a moment. My new book, A Glimmer of Pixie Dust, is actually now out on Audible officially. So if you want to go listen to that, I've talked about that recently, but it is there finally. I do have my book also, What the Mansion Eyes See, which is about two Disney history live streamers who fall in love beneath the watchful eyes of the Haunted Mansion, but as their past begins to haunt their present, what they fear most might just follow them home. So this is Colette and Eric's story, the second book in the Pixie Dust in the Parks series, which is a romantic suspense series set in the Disney parks that weaves Disney history throughout the story. So, and I believe this is your favorite, Kirk, right? Of my books in this series.
100%. That's the one that needs to be adapted into a film. I need to see that.
It would be a fun one. And the other thing is because I am going to talk a little bit about Dorothea Redmond later on. And so I do have a sticker that says Fearless, and this is actually about the brave pioneering women of Imagineering and Disney animation. And I also have a t-shirt for it as well, but it lists a whole bunch of the women. It's got Bianca Majoli, Grace Huntington, Retta Scott, Sylvia Holland, Mary Blair, Harriet Burns, Alice Davis, Dorothea Redmond, Joyce Carlson, Leota Toombs, and Ruth Shellhorn. So a lot of the women that helped develop the Disney films and Disney parks, just reminding us to fear less. So that is available at disneycicerone.com. Kirk, what do you got going on over there at Walrus Cart?
We chillin'. We're dude, the other day, no joke, somebody asked me, what you doing? And I said, nothing, chilling at the Holiday Inn. And immediately after that, they wrote, which Holiday Inn are you at? And I was like, oh man, I guess 2003 Chingy is really showing.
Oh man, we're getting old.
Millennial jokes. All right. Right now at walruscarp.com, it's holiday merch.
Yay!
So we just left out of our Halloween season into Christmas time. So we have tons of different t-shirts and sweatshirts because it's getting cold. I hate how cold it is. It's actually going to be a high of 60 this week down here in Florida, which is gross. It's disgusting. So yeah, go check out all of our holiday merch. New drops will be coming for this season. And, Merry early Christmas as we start celebrating in like 2 weeks down here. And decorations have already been put up at a couple of the parks.
Isn't that crazy? It's like, that was one of my most magical Disney trips, I think, when I was 11, was we went over Halloween into November 1st. And I remember them like changing it overnight from Halloween to Christmas. And I thought that was one of the most magical things I'd ever experienced. So special.
It's always a really big deal when the tree goes up in Magic Kingdom for a lot of people. So it's like, it's not really Christmas until that happens. Cause there will be a quick transition, right? Cause you have I think the last date for Not So Scary is on Saturday. So then Sunday you'll start transitioning, and then Monday you'll start seeing a lot more decorations up in the park.
Yeah.
But the tree, usually it takes a good solid week, 2 weeks before that's up.
So let's move on, and I'm going to do my story number 2. This one's about Dorothea Redmond, who is just one of my favorite Disney Imagineers, creators. So she contributed to the mood and architectural concepts for the Haunted Mansion, which is what we're going to talk about. But we haven't really talked about Dorothea Redmond at all on Distory, so I just wanted to give you, who are maybe not familiar with who she is, just a little bit of a backstory about her. So she received her degree in interior design from the USC School of Architecture and then went to Art Center College. She was awarded a degree in illustration in 1936 and then later taught at that same school. So you can see her here as a teacher. Her quote from her son and filmmaker Lee Redmond, he said, "I loved watching her paint because there was no hesitation at all. Everything was direct, straightforward, right on point, and then you'd start to see something emerge from color. Using a minimal amount of paint, she had a knack for capturing a feeling that allowed your brain to fill in the spaces in between," which I think is very true about her art. Is some of it is way more surreal. This one's a little bit more architectural in its that I'm showing you here. This is from Disneyland's New Orleans Square. But she became actually the first woman in Hollywood production. She actually became the first woman Hollywood production designer in 1938. So she was a pioneering woman for sure. She worked for David O. Selznick, who produced Gone with the Wind. So you can actually see this is some of her art for Gone with the Wind back when she had her maiden name of Holt. According to her son, it was a workplace full of resentment for her presence. He said, "It was really difficult when she started out in motion pictures, but my mother didn't take crap from anybody." He says, "She'd walk into male-dominated places and deal with all these snide comments because she was better than anyone else in the room." And this wasn't just like imagined on her behalf that, she was being ostracized or whatever. It says, actually out of resentment, her male coworkers even demanded that she work in a walled-off area separate from theirs.
Man.
Imagine trying to be creative in that kind of environment.
That's bad.
It's really bad. So that was what she was facing on Gone with the Wind. And then she also worked on a whole bunch of Alfred Hitchcock movies, who of course directed films like Psycho and whatnot. She contributed to his films Rebecca, Rear Window, and To Catch a Thief. And her son said, "Hitch was very fond of my mother because she used light and shadow to create moods with her layouts. Very few people painted that way." So you can see some of the art here that influenced him. And so essentially she was responsible for influencing that German expressionist aesthetic that Hitchcock was credited with. So if you love that aesthetic in Alfred Hitchcock movies, a lot of it came from Dorothea Redmond.
That's cool.
Yeah. She also worked with Cecil B. DeMille, director and producer, who also co-founded Paramount Pictures and whatnot, and helped establish Hollywood as a center of the industry. She worked with him for the movie The Ten Commandments. Like, he did these big giant epic films and whatnot. And that was in 1956. She was then hired on for the architectural firm of William Pereira, I think is how you say that, and Charles Luckman, who helped plan and map out early Disneyland. So they were also connected to Disneyland. That she was then hired for the architectural... Wait, sorry. I already said that. Sorry. She then did interiors for Los Angeles International Airport, Los Angeles County Museum, and also the Seattle Space Needle, which I had no idea until I did this. So that was pretty neat. I was not able to find any art for that. But like many early Imagineers, like Herb Ryman, Harper Goff, etc., she was poached by Disney from the studio industry for Disneyland. So they gathered a lot of talent from these great set designers in the film industry, and Dorothea Redmond was one of them for Disneyland. So, and she said because at that point she was tired of 10 years of working weekends to meet Monday deadlines. She was just over it. And so that's why she moved on from that architectural firm. So she joined Wed Enterprises in October of 1964, and Marty Sklar said her watercolor sketches were extraordinary placemaking. So it really just like puts you there, which what we're looking at here is actually the Creole Cafe. Later it was the Cafe Orleans. But it's just beautiful, beautiful art that she did for that. You can also see some more from New Orleans Square in Disneyland. This is the Court of Angels. And then I love this one of Blue Bayou, which does look a lot like that sitting room that's in the opening of Blue Bayou before you walk into the actual restaurant. And then this is also one from Club 33 that she worked on, which hardly any of us ever get to see. So it's kind of fun to see her art for it at the very least. But she didn't just do things for Disneyland. She also did a whole bunch of art for Walt Disney World. So back when it was going to be the Nantucket Harbor House in 1970, later the Columbia Harbor House, she did this illustration for the architecture inside. And Kirk, you might kind of recognize some of the feel of this, even though it's has a lot of white walls instead of dark ones like you have now. And then also this for Walt Disney World, this area that is now Sir Mickey's. This is from 1968, but just beautiful, beautiful place. Let's talk about the mansion, though. Let's talk about what she did there. She made some mood concepts and architectural ornamentation for the Haunted Mansion. This is all from late 1967. So the mansion opened in 1969 to give you some context of when this was going on. Before I get into this one, I just want to give a little bit of a shout out first to the long forgotten Haunted Mansion blog, and also Fox Nolt, the author of Boundless Realm, who have contributed some of the thoughts here about Dorothea. So these are a lot of people that have studied the mansion far longer than I have and far more in depth. So thank you so much for your contributions to this episode and to our Haunted Mansion series when we first covered it. Definitely wanted to give credit there. But Fox notes that Redmond was an interior designer for WED at a time which made art of hers explicitly for attractions very unusual. She usually did, like we had just seen, like all these architectural studies, right? So she didn't do attraction concepts. So suddenly she's doing these concepts for the Haunted Mansion. And Fox suggested that Claude Coates was directing the team to come up with concepts in which faces and eyes could be hidden inside attraction decor. So Claude Coates was the overall attraction producer or manager of the mansion, whereas Mark Davis was the lead designer. And Fox also notes that practically every aspect of the Haunted Mansion as it was built has some origin in something Mark Davis or Claude Coates drew or painted. But so she would then have been influenced by whatever their direction to make these is what we're getting from that. So let's look at some of the concepts from Dorothea. You might have seen this one before, which is this kind of like ethereal, endless hallway that has these like floating orbs. Have you seen this one, Kirk?
I've never seen this as a concept art, no, but yeah, it's cool.
It
reminds me of like Will of the Wisps, but
yeah,
in an endless hallway.
Right. It looks so ethereal. And what's interesting is most people only see the left side of this, but there is actually a sketch she did on the right-hand side, which shows that you would actually have moved in the Omnimover through the hallway into the endless hallway before turning at the end. So very different concept for the endless hallway. You don't just go by it and see it. You instead go through it, which is really just fascinating. So that's one concept of hers for it. We also have a few from the portrait gallery that she suggested here. So you can see there are portraits on the walls and there's people walking through it, and you can see a staircase at the end. And then a window to the left. But I wanted to talk specifically about this version of it because you can see not only are there portraits on the wall and a staircase at the end, but there's a few elements here that we get later that come into the conservatory instead. And this is probably because there was a concept before this one of, this one I'm pretty sure this is Ken Anderson, where people are walking by what is essentially the conservatory where that coffin is with Exitentio's voice, and like the saying, "Let me out of here." It looks like the idea of attending the wake used to be in the portrait gallery, and then they decided to pull it into the mansion instead, like into the ride instead. Obviously it was in the mansion, but so these are people kind of walking by, and there would be a coffin, and like you can also see those columns and the window with the trees behind it. All of that was going to be in the portrait gallery, which is I think why she then drew the same kind of concept of this viewing area that is inside this portrait gallery area. We also see these columns that she has put here. We see some in this one too for Ken Anderson, but we also see it a little bit more defined in her version. And I think that's the columns that we do see inside this conservatory. I couldn't find a great picture of it. I tried for a long time. This is one of my photos, though, from the Haunted Mansion holiday overlay. So there's unfortunately a giant wreath over them, so you can almost see the columns. You can see this early version of the columns, and I think that this is likely done by Cuban sculptor Ciro Rolando Santana Yarit, I think is how you say that, who carved a whole bunch of things in the mansion, including a lot of the demon faces and griffins and whatnot. I'm fairly sure he also carved that ornamentation for those columns. But anyway, I think that what we can say is that some of her art inspired some of these pieces of the mansion as it was coming together because it was focused on the architecture. But something we also see here is yet another view of that particular area. We see a fireplace, and then we see back in the staircase, we see a suit of armor, almost like it's coming to life, which we do see in the mansion, which was not her concept. That was actually came from an earlier one from Ken Anderson. So I'm not going to get into that just for sake of time. But if you look just on the top of the newel post, if you will, going up the staircase, there is something that looks kind of like a griffin. And so I think this is likely where we get the griffins that we see when we first start ascending into the staircase of the haunted mansion, into the void, when we're in the void. And we see those griffins that were supposed to turn their heads and look at you. And that's why you can see that like line across their neck, because the idea was that they would turn and look at you, and it was creepy. I think we got that from this illustration from Dorothea Redmond, if I had to guess. Some other things we get from Dorothea, one of the creepiest versions of the seance room, definitely this like skeletal version of the seance. And we don't get Madame Leota ball or anything like that. We have just like 3 tall like candles, and there's no crystal ball at all in this scene. This is when we see more of that idea of she's creating something where you kind of, your mind fills in the blanks about what you're seeing. There's a lot more surrealism in this particular one, but it's definitely the creepiest version of the mansion that we have for the seance circle. And then this one I love. This is definitely surreal. We see almost like these branches, and then we see this chair that has a whole bunch of eyes on it, like the mansion is watching you, right? And then we see what's not the beating heart bride, because it's a headless figure that's coming down the stairs, but it definitely has a heart in its chest. But all of this has a very watery ground to it. And there's a possibility that there was at one point they were thinking about doing a boat ride for the haunted mansion, and they brought it to Walt, and he said, no, we already have too many boat rides. And I believe that was before they did Pirates of the Caribbean as a boat ride. He was just talking about like Small World and whatnot, Storybook Land canal boats and all those kinds of things. So it's possible that, you know, the idea of having it be a water ride is in her head when she's making this. And that's why there's kind of this watery texture to the floor. But I'm not entirely sure if that influenced her, or if she just really wanted to make it look that way. This one I think is really fascinating, Kirk, because it kind of looks like a castle. It's got all these kind of like arches, and then it has a chandelier that looks like it has like antlers, like Gaston's been up in here like decorating, and lots of surreal figures in it. But what I want to focus on is the columns in particular, because they look like they have these demon faces on them, which remind me so much of the demon faces that we have in the top of the woodwork in the Florida version as you're walking through that load area. They're not exactly the same, obviously, but the inspiration of the idea of having these demon faces kind of on top of columns, I kind of wonder if they pulled some of that idea from that. This is probably my favorite out of the bunch, quite honestly, because it is a haunted wine cellar, very creepy cellar, and there is a whole bunch of red liquid on the floor. And you could say, well, is it wine? Is it blood? Like, what is it on the floor? And the idea that you don't know, the unknown, I think is what's creepiest about this. There's definitely a lot of cobwebs and wine and all of these kinds of things. Also, there's the idea of, you know, creepy things being in the attic, creepy things being in the basement. That is a theme in the Haunted Mansion. And so Ken Anderson established that too when he did this idea of the captain who puts Priscilla in a chest and locks her in there, and it's ghastly, but one of the versions he did put her in the basement. So I kind of wonder if that was playing off of that, you know, in any way, even though that concept would have been long abandoned by the time Dorothea made that particular art. But still, the idea of creepy things being in the basement, secrets in the basement, I think is in there as well. We also see a haunted wine cellar at the end of Phantom Manor in Disneyland Paris. So I think they took some of these ideas and they incorporated them into the end of that, especially because wine is such a huge part of their culture there. So I wouldn't be surprised if that particular piece of art inspired this part of Disneyland Paris. That's what I got for Dorothea Redmond. We could talk about her for eons. She did some wonderful art for Cinderella Castle murals and all these kinds of things. But for sake of time, I think we have to stop there just because we could talk about her all day. She's amazing.
I like it. You know what? There's concept art. I've never seen any of those. So yeah. That was all news to me. We're going to rip off Disney 100% and go to Germany for a second. And now I know what you're thinking. Why on earth are we not talking about an actual haunted mansion? Oh, it's not a Disney product, but there's going to be a lot of sequences that are very similar. Welcome to Europa Park. And the image that I pulled up is of their roller coaster that takes place in a geodesic sphere in their France section of their
it's like
their park. Yeah, this is the start. This is where we start, and it only gets weirder. For those that don't know, Europa Park is it's actually got a really unique story because it's made by Mock Rides. So Mock Rides makes attractions. Predominantly, they make roller coasters, but they're also known for a lot of dark rides. And so in this park, you will see them competing with much larger parks. And what they're actually doing in here is they're trying to make the best showcased versions of these attractions so that they can bring clients and then sell them these attractions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like ride systems.
Like a house that you're touring in a neighborhood where you're
yeah, it's like an open house,
right?
For attractions. So like, what better way to showcase how good these folks are at making attractions by creating attractions themselves, right?
Interesting. Okay,
so that's kind of the vibe we're going with here, but we are going to go and explore one attraction in particular, which just got a refurb, but it was originally called Geisterschloss, and Geisterschloss meant ghost castle or ghost house.
Nice.
But it gets renamed to Castello dei Medici, and it's about the Medici family. This actually takes place in the Italy portion of their park. So the outside facade has a big old gargoyle. And it's actually got quite a lot of capacity because they use very similar doom buggies. But it's kind of funny because you look at how would you know that this is a haunted house a haunted castle? You wouldn't.
No.
And there's a purpose for that because this is a guise. And the overlying story is that Lorenzo de' Medici rises to power and is a large entrepreneur in Italy. And he is betrayed by the Pazzi family, or the Piazzi family. And in revenge, he acquires a mysterious stone tablet written in an unknown mystic script promising eternal life if he follows the instructions. So he invites a number of guests to his Italian Renaissance castle. And as you tour the castle, you'll see really lavish things. But he needs your souls so that he can remain immortal. So that's kind of the overarching story. There is a story here, but it does get very convoluted as we go through. I love the beginning of this because there is like a almost caretaker with a raven, but it gets better. I have to pull up a YouTube video from time to time to just show pictures of things that happen. But as we head in, you'll notice that he is an animated figure.
Nice.
But he spits.
Oh,
he spits water out of his mouth. So like initially as you're walking in, this guy's hocking loogies at you.
That's disgusting.
Look at that. He spits a big long stream of water out as you enter in. Now you'll notice throughout this experience, there are lots of takeaways and similarities to the Haunted Mansion. This is 100% a ripoff of the Haunted Mansion in the best way possible. It's very fun. So as we roll inside, you'll notice that there are changing portraits. Now, this just got a refurb recently, but before it was paintings. They had their own changing portraits that were really creepy, and there's a lot of them. But as you go back into the attraction itself, they've changed them all to digital, and there's lots of animatronics. Like there's this creepy dude in the queue who's basically telling you the story until we find ourselves
in the stretching room.
Into a stretching room. There are 4 giant portraits, and this room does stretch. You'll notice that all you see below, it's almost like somebody who drew this just saw the stretching room like top before they expanded.
Yeah.
And guessed that it would just be legs underneath. So all that's under here are legs. There's nothing fancy. There's nothing going on or anything haunted. It's just their legs.
Oh
that's
my
it.
gosh.
And you can see, like, it's really funny, like, the scrim itself is not very taut, so it shakes, like, because there's all this room underneath it, just the way that they portrayed their stretching room, which I think is very, very funny. Now, the stretching room does have a moment where...
my God! What the heck?
Where really on top of the guest's head is a gentleman who is hanging.
Oh my God.
I have, it's wild, right? Okay, hang on. I have another one that's like a little bit of a better view
People
of this.
think that the stretching room is bad in Disney. Like, they would...
Yeah. So here's another version from a different angle of this. The dude literally comes down fast and starts twitching in there. And then they pick him back up.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's so, dude, I absolutely love this attraction because it's so ludicrous. All right, let's keep on moving through. I'm not going to go ad nauseum because I could do an entire, probably 5 episodes just on the Castillo because it's just so good. But we notice that we're getting on our own versions of Doom buggies.
Nice.
Now, I think this is kind of cool. We caught one of the way you actually get onto this is you go downstairs. I think, you know, who would really like this is Raleigh Crump. I think Raleigh Crump would have really been into this attraction only because there's so many really demonic, really skeletal and creepy things. But when they take one of the Doom buggies out of service, they put this like headstone with a skeleton.
Nice.
Which I thought was interesting. We just get like a little cushion on ours.
Yeah.
But they are 100% clamshell style Doom buggies that move and operate just the same as a normal Doom buggy would. And we get, oh, look! An endless hallway.
Stole it from Dorothea Redmond.
Oh my God, dude. There's so many just like, you're like, oh God, there's so many similarities. It's wild. And what's the first room we go into? A library.
Wow.
And of course we have a king and a queen, and we have a ghost who is missing and holding their head.
This is crazy.
There are some instruments. We have like a headless violinist. Here's our grand hall.
It's very small.
Different because we're not elevated in this scene. We're at like the table level. This reminds me a lot more of how we see the Phantom Manor and the Phantoms elevated above.
Right.
And you see him like talking. Well, Medici is here talking, and basically he gets all of his guests to drink, and this elixir steals their souls and gives him immortality. But another aside to this attraction is they made a 6-minute film, and in the film they talk about how Medici can only perform this ritual on the 13th hour of a very specific day. So like at midnight, it transcends into this spiritual realm, and a 13th hour unlocks for that one day, like every 60 years or something,
as
every
it does,
hundreds of years.
You know.
And I was like, the 13 hour, bro, this is wild. They just ripping everything off. They, of course, have to have their own wallpaper. And their own, what I would argue is the Sinister 11.
Yeah. All the portraits.
And then you can't tell me this doesn't look like the exact busts that we're dealing with in the library.
They like follow you. Their eyes follow you. Yeah.
They follow you, so they're in cut as well, just the same
Concave,
exact as and then we go immediately into a static figure, Pepper's ghost effect, that shows up in your car.
Wow. I mean, it literally is just ripped off from Disneyland.
I know. It's unreal, like how much of it is. We do get a dancing scene, but these aren't Pepper's ghosts. They are all like ghouls and goblins, except for a weird unicorn-headed creature in like a Renaissance getup. But they're dancing around, and we do have an organist
it's a
here.
jester, I think.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you notice there is a clock all the way in the back, but it's not a 13-hour clock. But if you watch its hands, it's going crazy. It's like spinning. Yeah. So we're obviously transcending time here at this point. There is a morgue and a tomb area as well. So pulling that off of the graveyard, we also get a suit of armor. Oh, this one's really cute because the armor lifts up and you see a little face inside, which is fun. We do get another Pepper's Ghost effect. There are some animatronics in here as they did their update. And then as we get to the final, it's like everyone is deceased, and it's like they're removing their physical bodies and turning into spiritual or skeletal bodies, depending. And then there's a weird Liberty Bell. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But it finishes with these two characters, which are very fun. It's like their version of the caretaker, but there is no doggy. It's just, it's like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza version of a caretaker scene. There's this really cool like snake projection effect over a giant statue of Medici. But then now, Kate, you'll like this, because welcome to Mr. Toad's. If you're going to rip off one attraction, you might as well rip off two, as we go into the mouth, or the void transcending into hell. We do see some actually very scary devils, not really cheeky devils, but look, he pops up out of the stone. So it's like their own like little popping ghosts.
Wow.
But this is like really demonic and creepy, and the rest of it is just like basically a bunch of skeletons and skull walls. And then the best is when you finish and you get off, instead of having
what the heck is that?
This is their version of like the little Leota, little bride, basically welcoming you back if you want to come. And it has a ridiculous voice. I'm not going to play it, but it's really high pitched.
Demon head.
It is, and it moves. It actually talks. So.
Wow.
That would be our unique pilfered version of the Haunted Mansion, aka Geisterschloss or Castello de Medici, which you can go to Germany and experience for yourself.
That was a wild ride. All right, so to wrap up this very special Haunted Mansion bonus episode here of Distory, I want to talk about some ghosts that we didn't get in the Haunted Mansion. And a lot of them we've never talked about before. So first, we're going to start off with a concept from Existencio, which is a tiny ghost man in a bottle. So it was the guest could then observe. This is most likely acquired from one of Yale Gracey's sketches of ghosts in bottles, which you can see here, which actually uses the same Pepper's Ghost effect that's very similar to the one we've been talking about in Tower of Terror. So that's why I wanted to show this one here with the glass. Then the reflection there appears then in the jar. So there's a projector, bounces off of this angled mirror, and then people can see it in the glass jar. So I just love this Yale Gracey sketch of how this would have worked. This one is really interesting. This was actually from the new book, Happiest Place on Earth, The Incredible Story of Walt Disney's Disneyland. Thank you to Don Hahn and Chris Merritt for doing their incredible work on that book. I've really been enjoying digging through it. If you were a D23 Gold member, I think you got it for free as part of your member kit for this year. But this particular sketch I had never seen before. This is one by Ken Anderson, and it says, "Quiet, now entering the haunted catacombs." And it's actually a train tunnel that you go into. So very reminds me of Mr. Toad a lot, but there doesn't have any oncoming trains or anything like that. But the idea of catacombs and it being haunted, like I'd never seen this before in my life. So this isn't necessarily a ghost per se, but this is like definitely Haunted Mansion concept that's really rare that I don't think that we've really talked about much before. So I just wanted to show you guys that one. Next, we have to go to Mark Davis and talk about a few of his ideas, because he honestly had so many ghosts and sketches. And his kind of design philosophy for most things that he did was he would just do like a crazy amount of sketches and ideas and concepts, and he's like, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks is kind of his design philosophy for these attractions. So that's why we have a lot of ghosts that we didn't get. This one is a boxer ghost who's standing on like the second floor balcony and doing some boxing. So like shadow boxer. And then this one I love is a carpenter ghost who's actually sawing away at a plank of wood, and he's making coffins. So
that's fun.
He's got a little pencil over his ear and a little toolbox, which I think is great. This one's a conquistador. And then this one is a conquistador that's sharpening a sword on like a whetstone. Both of those, it says banquet room. So I'm guessing Grand Hall was where he was considering this, but this obviously, I don't think this fits in very well with the Grand Hall. So I'm kind of glad that they did away with this one. We also have a pirate captain. It looks like he would have come out of the changing portrait. This is not the only time we see something coming out of a portrait and then coming to life. We also saw that with the most dangerous ghost in the mansion concept. It's a whole other thing that we've already talked about before, so I won't get into that. But this one is more back when, because they developed pirates alongside the same time as they developed the Haunted Mansion for the most part. So there was a lot of pirates that were going to be in the mansion, and then they kind of pulled them out when they did more Pirates of the Caribbean stuff. So a pirate concept here. And this one's a minstrel that's singing along with a singing bust. So just a musical one to show you there. Then we also have this lion tamer who's holding a chair and trying to fend off a ghostly lion. I like this one. This one is a ghost who's sitting in his bathtub and giving himself a good scrub with a brush on his back. But he has some glasses on. And he's looking over at you like, hey, I'm in my bathtub. You're just like, the idea of the we're just visiting the ghost home and they're just doing their thing and we're just seeing them in their unnatural state. This one is kind of a banshee. And then there's also like a shadow ghost with red eyes who's playing the fiddle. So more musical ghosts there. This is a great white hunter whose rug that is a tiger has come to life and bit him on the backside, probably getting his revenge. But you know what I think is interesting about this, Kirk, is because we studied that Mr. Toad's Wild Ride version that was in Walt Disney World. And this scene looks so much like the trophy room later, where they have, the heads on the walls, but they also have that picture of the great white hunter kind of having conquered the tiger. So really think this one influenced, most likely, Rolly Crump for that trophy room in that attraction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. This one is a party in the graveyard. We see a cute little cat with some fish bones, which is fun.
Aww, that's cute.
And then there are some witches making like a witch's brew, and then all the ghosts are toasting with the witch's brew. And we do see
I like that too. Yeah, that one's good.
And the caretaker and the dog are off to the left-hand side as well. And then we see some dancing ghosts, which is really fun. They look like they're doing some sort of country dance or up on the ceiling. This is again from that Happiest Place on Earth book, and this one's called Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, which is a William Blake poem. And the first stanza is, Tiger, Tiger, burning bright, in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? So why would have this been in the mansion? Because it looks like a tiger that looks like blue and then a tiger that looks like red and orange. And I've been trying to figure out what in the world this was. So I looked into the meaning behind William Blake's poem because I was not familiar with this one. So in this particular poem, Blake uses the tiger as a symbol of sublime power, danger, and awe, possibly representing both the beauty and terror inherent in creation. The poem explores the duality of existence, good and evil, innocence and experience, creation and destruction. It raises spiritual and philosophical questions about God or the creator. How can the same force that made something gentle and innocent like the lamb also make something fierce and violent like the tiger? So there's another poem about the lamb, and they were mirrored. So ultimately, the tiger isn't just about a literal animal. It's about the mystery of creation and the complexity of divine will that makes us wrestle with unanswerable questions about good and evil and the nature of the universe, which would make this 100% appropriate for the mansion. That kind of like duality of good versus evil and all those kinds of things, because we have that in the mansion with, there's some sinister ghosts and there's also some very happy-go-lucky, friendly ghosts. And so, there is that duality that exists in the mansion itself. So I just thought that was a really interesting concept that I had never seen this one before they had published that book. We also have this string quartet. This is from 1968. We see some musicians playing their instruments. And this is not the first time we see musicians playing instruments as ghosts in the mansion. We see this concept from Existencio with a shadow ghost playing the piano, which is something we do see in both Disneyland and Disney World versions in different ways. Disneyland's is in the attic and Disney World's is in the music room. And then this version also is from Claude Coates. We see kind of a ghostly set of musicians playing the harp and cello and whatnot. And then the organ down below as well. This would have been for the Grand Hall. Then we have the squeaky door ghost, which I think we have mentioned this on Distory before, but I just want to bring it back because it's one of my favorites. So this is a ghost that is a maid responsible for putting creaks in the hinges of the doors of the house instead of removing them. So instead of de-squeakifying your doors, they're actually adding the squeaks. And this actually went into production, and they made a model of it, and it got pretty far because you can actually see it behind here. That's Wathel Rogers there, sliver of him on, and behind him is the squeaky door ghost, kind of in a full figure. So this got pretty far in production, but never made it into the mansion. We also have one of kind of the Dapper Dans on a bicycle built for 4. I don't know if they still use this at Disney World at all or Disneyland, but I have not seen it in a really long time. I think they do have it around, this bicycle built for 4 for the Dapper Dans, but this is inspired by that. Then this is the spider organist that I was talking about earlier. So instead of the organist being a person, he would actually have been a spider wearing a top hat, and then have a snake next to him, which was really random. So we never got that one. And then the last one I want to talk about is the rocking chair. This is actually, I'm pretty sure this is a Ken Anderson concept, and we do see some of the bust back on the back wall there. And there's a rocking chair with like some knitting supplies and some curtains billowing in. Well, this then developed into this, I think it's another Ken Anderson. There's some debate about this might be by Dwayne Alt and it's misattributed to Ken Anderson. But in any case, there is a woman who's like a grandmotherly figure who's sitting in a chair and she's not knitting. I almost think it's a blend between this illustration with the curtains billowing and the knitting and then this grandma. And I think that's where Mark Davis got this idea for this grandma who is knitting this bizarre looking sneed sweater, something. It's got 3 arms and like 2 legs or something. It's a weird looking thing that she's knitting. And there's...
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, there's a curtain billowing behind her. This is kind of what you can see. The idea was that she would then disappear and the knitting would stay there, hung suspended in midair. Then she would reappear and keep knitting. If you're familiar with the Grand Hall, you'll know there is a grandma in the Grand Hall, though she is reading a book. She is not knitting, okay? And you can see her, that she does appear and reappear. This actually came from cartoonist Charles Addams of the Addams Family, and you can see it here that she is knitting something that has like a baby cardigan or something, and it has like 4 legs. And so this was not something that Mark Davis came up with himself. Many of his ideas were inspired by other creepy things that were out there. And you can see it also in the bottom right-hand corner of this one that's from Night Crawlers. There is a grandma who is actually knitting something that has a lot of extra limbs or something to it.
Yeah.
So I do want to give a shout out. That's from the Long Forgotten Mansion blog. So give them some support because they made that discovery, not me. I don't want to take credit for it, but I think it's a really interesting thing to bring up. But even if we didn't get the weird sneed thing that she's knitting, we do see in the mansion, if you look to her right-hand side, there is a basket of knitting supplies that we might not have noticed before. There's a little basket of yarn, knitting needles, and that is where it came from. So we didn't get the knitting, but we got the knitting supplies. So she could potentially start knitting at any given time and making us that need, which all people need. So... And that is that for all the ghosts we didn't get in the mansion. That's not all of them. That's like
there was a lot of new ones.
Yeah, lots and lots of things. Like I said, the mansion is the gift that keeps on giving. It's like an endless rabbit hole of things that you can talk about.
A boundless realm
of
the supernatural
for us foolish mortals. So we hope you guys enjoyed this exploration back into the mansion. I honestly, Kirk, I think we should make this a regular thing. I think this is a fun one.
Well, it's you and I. We could talk about the mansion forever
and ever.
And there's literally enough to go around. I actually I had 2 other segments and I was like, I'll just save them for when we do this again.
Yeah. There's so much we could have said. It was really hard to choose which 3 things to talk about, quite honestly, because even after 16 episodes of the Haunted Mansion, there's still so many more stories to tell. So thank you guys for hanging out with us for this episode of Distory. We hope you enjoyed a trip back into the mansion. Next time we will be headed back into the tower. We've got to do the exit of the tower. We've got to get out of the Walt Disney World version. So we're going to be exploring the photo area that is where you would pick up your photos and then into the gift shop, the exit. And we'll see how far we get after that. But Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up today?
I desperately need to go to Europa Park. That thing is such a ripoff. I need to see it.
Thank you guys so much for being with us. We hope you appreciated this jaunt back to the Haunted Mansion as much as we did, and we'll see you next time for more Distory.